Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another daily dose of Commander Master spoilers. So I know yesterday our spoiler video was a little bit of a downer. There was a lot of bulk rares, there wasn't much high-end stuff, so it was a little bit depressing. Well, today, Wizards fixed that problem. We have a ton of S tier cards for the first time since day one of spoiler season, a bunch of really awesome reprints, even a ton of high value uncommons, which means we should probably jump right into it, start tier ranking today's reprints. Before we do, a couple of quick reminders. First, if you need any of these cards, you can snag them from our sponsor Card Kingdom over at cardkingdom.com/MTGGoldfish. Second, if you want to keep up on all the latest spoilers throughout the day, you should mosey on over to MTGpreviews.com. Anyway, let's tier rank some Commander Masters. First up today, we got our exclusive MTG Goldfish preview cards from Commander Masters. Thanks to WotC for hooking us up, and I'm not going to go in depth on these cards. Tomer actually did an entire video showing off these cards over on the MTG Goldfish Commander YouTube, but I did want to mention they exist and also point you to Tomer's video. Click the card, check out his video on these cards. But the cards are Rankle, Master of Pranks, and Imp's Mischief. So Rankle, if it was on our tier list, it would be a D tier card. It's just over $5. So not low value. Thankfully, Wizards bumped it down to rare for this reprinting. If it was a mythic, it would not be a very good inclusion in the set. But at rare, Rankle's perfectly fine. See some play in discard decks in Commander. Imp's Mischief would actually be an A tier card. It's just over $25, which is kind of weird because it doesn't see that much play. Although this is mostly because it's from Planar Chaos and hasn't been reprinted in almost 20 years. So even though it doesn't see a ton of play, it's pretty expensive based on its scarcity. So I expect the price should come down a lot because of these three printing, which is a really good thing because Imp's Mischief I actually think is kind of a sleeper in Commander. It's a really good gotcha card. No one expects a counter spell or a redirection spell out of a mono black deck. $25, it's kind of hard to play it as a meme, but now that it'll hopefully be like $5 or something, it's going to be way cheaper. It'll be a lot easier for people just to throw it in their decks and experience the joy of just getting your opponents by surprise. So anyway, like I said, those are our exclusive previews. Thanks again to WotC. Check out Tomer's video. Also, while we're talking about the MTG Goldfish Commander YouTube, we're nearing the end of main set spoilers, but next week, we're going to get the pre-cons from Commander Masters, and the pre-cons are especially exciting because they actually contain new cards. It's not just reprints, and Tomer is going to be covering those in spoiler videos on the Commander YouTube. So if you haven't subbed to the Commander channel yet, definitely sub to that, check it out. That's where the pre-con spoilers are going to be next week. Moving on to the tier list proper, we actually have some honest to goodness S tier cards today. I know yesterday was a bit of a downer day in spoiler world. There's a lot of bulk rares, no high end stuff, but it seems like Wizards heard our complaint because today we have 5 different S tier cards. These are cards that were between $50 and $100. We haven't had an S tier card since the first day of spoilers, and now we get 5 all in one day. So the biggest and the baddest and the most expensive, doubling season. That card is ridiculously expensive, and it's one of those cards that every time it gets reprinted, it drops a little bit, but then bounces right back up because it's in demand from so many different decks in Commander. It's really fun, and it's also really strong. So doubling season, it's around $80 or something. So this is one that I expect the price will drop back a little bit, but don't wait too long if you want a copy because it's going to go right back up to where it was before, especially being printed at Mythic. Avacyn Angel of Hope, I don't know why this card's still so expensive. It's kind of a classic Commander card from a decade ago. I don't see it as much as I used to, but people still really love Angels, and I guess making all your permanents indestructible can be pretty strong. Great Henge, not an old card. We were first printed in Throne of Eldraine just a few years ago. One of the most expensive cards, maybe the most expensive card in its standard format. Rotated, still super expensive because it is really good in basically any green creature deck. It makes mana, it gains you life, it draws you cards, it grows your creatures. It is ridiculous. The last 2 cards, these are cards that right now are over $50, but I expect this reprinting is going to really drop their price. The first is Arachnogenesis, Spider Fog, which is an old Commander Precon card that recently really spiked in price because of Shelob decks. Everyone's building Shelob, Arachnogenesis, making a bunch of spiders, preventing damage, you can block with your spiders, kill something, get a food token. Really good in Shelob. So its price kind of snowballed out of control to up over $50, but now that it's getting a reprint and and it's the only card in the S tier today that's reprinted at rare. I expect Arachnogenesis is definitely going down under $20, probably under $10. Like, I think the price is really gonna drop. So if you're someone who's trying to put together Shelob and waiting for Arachnogenesis, this is gonna be your window to get one on the cheap. The last card, Sun Quan, Lord of Wu. This is a card that is a portal card that has once been reprinted in a weird supplemental product, but mostly hasn't been reprinted. It's around $70 right now, just giving all your creatures horsemanship, a good way to close out the game, I guess, if you got a big board. So it'll be interesting to see. I expect this is going to be one of those portal style cards that now that it's really getting a proper reprinting, is going to come down a lot in price. Maybe not all the way to like $5 or whatever, but it's a card that doesn't have that much demand, and its current price is mostly based on scarcity. So I expect we'll see Doubling Season Avis and Great Henge. Those are the kind of cards that they're going to come back a bit in price, but then go right back up to where they were before, like they always do. Arachnogenesis and Sun Quan, though, these are ones that I think we're going to see the price drop a ton and probably stay down for quite a long time, which is a really good thing. So, really solid list of S tier cards today. Moving on to the A tier, we got a bunch more really good reprints. Today might be the best spoiler day that we've had, just in terms of putting really solid high value reprints in the set. Deflecting Swat, member number 4 of the Commander 2020 free spell cycle, just missed being S tier. It's like $49 or something right now. Coming with a frame version, another staple. We haven't seen the blue member of the cycle yet, but I'm sure that's coming. Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger with a nice profile version. Craterhoof, another one of those cards that it's just so good in Commander that it gets reprinted, the price drops, it goes right back up. If there is a complaint from today, it's Smothering Tithe. So the Smothering Tithe, the frame break looks really sweet, and you can't really see it very well, but it is a mythic. So this is a card that it's one of the best white cards in Commander. It has always been a rare. We've talked throughout spoilers. He's an actually complimented Wizards on dropping some cards that used to be mythics down to rare. Smothering Tithe going the opposite direction, being bumped up to mythic from rare, which is a little concerning. That means this reprint is not going to help its price nearly as much as we would probably want it to, and it's especially disappointing because it wasn't that long ago that Smothering Tithe was actually in a $20 Brawl pre-con, and it was just like one of those cards at Wizards. It felt like they could reprint all the time wherever they wanted to, but now it seems like things have changed, and this is going to be one of those cards that Wizards tries to keep relatively scarce and tries to keep the price high. So I don't know, that part's a little bit disappointing, although the new art does look pretty sweet. Loyal Retainers, still pretty expensive, even though it's been reprinted a few times. Balefire Dragon, this is another one. I always forget this card's expensive, but people love their dragons, kind of like we were talking about with Avacyn. There's like this extra tax you pay for certain tribes in Commander just because they're so popular. Angels, dragons, those are tribes that are so popular that some of their tribe members, even if they don't see a ton of play, especially if they're mythics, end up costing a lot more than you probably expect. Moving to the B tier, we get some really good Commander cards. These are cards that actually see quite a bit of play in Commander. Nihab the Eternal, ridiculous big mana Commander. Toxic Deluge, I give Wizards a lot of credit. Toxic Deluge was a really expensive card, but they have started reprinting it very aggressively. So right now it's still in the $10 to $25 range, but if Wizards keeps reprinting it at the pace that they currently are, I think this is going to end up being like a Wrath of God style card that's going to be accessible to anyone in their Commander decks, which is a really, really big deal. It was just in a Commander precon, so seeing a Commander precon reprinting into a Commander Masters at rare reprinting, that makes me think that unlike Smothering Tithe, which it feels like Wizards is trying to keep expensive, Toxic Deluge, it seems like one of those cards that Wizards is actually actively trying to make cheap so everyone can have it in their decks. Heliod Suncrown, it does see Commander play, but actually probably a more relevant reprint for Modern, honestly, where it's a pretty important combo piece with Walking Ballista and some other cards. Mikaeus Sunhollow, the new version looks really, really good. Bloodchief's Ascension, that's another card that I honestly hadn't realized had crept up to $20 as a combo piece mostly. So good to get more of those. Razaketh the Foul-Blooded, just the big tutoring demon at the top end of your curve. So a bunch of cards that are not like absurdly expensive, but are fairly expensive, and more importantly, are mostly in pretty high demand. man, these are cards that players will actually use. Moving on to the C tier, we got Flawless Maneuver, another member of the free spell cycle from Commander 2020. This one's a little bit cheaper just because it was recently put into Commander Precon, so Wizards really getting the price of that one down. Eureka, one of the most popular commanders in the entire format. Days Undoing has seen a little bit of an uptick in play as people mess around with like Orcish Bowmasters and Wheel decks recently. Balin Wandering Knight, Pure Steel Paladin, really good modern reprint there that also sees some commander play. Moving on to the D tier, cards that are $2 to $5. Zatortha Strength card it. Not an expensive card, but I'm glad they reprinted this because the only version of this card in existence was the Godzilla printing from Ikoria, which means the supply is probably not super high. So it seems like one of those cards that if there's ever a deck that really wants it, its price could spike really quickly. So I'm glad we're getting the pre-printing of Zatortha out of the way. Zancha, pretty hilarious commander. Vindictive Lich, I've never actually seen anyone play that card, but kind of a cool modal design. Teferi Temporal Archmage, super annoying Staxy commander. Treasure Nabber, at first when I saw this, I thought it was Dockside Extortionist. The alt art version in specific looks a lot like Dockside Extortionist to me, but this is like the really bad Dockside Extortionist that no one plays and isn't worth much. Finally, we do have a bunch of literal bulk today, but honestly, not as much as yesterday, and considering we have so many S tier cards and high value cards, hard to really complain about this, especially since like Disrupt Decorum, that's a promo, should be pretty easy to get. Even though they're not expensive, Queen Marchesa, Yennet are pretty popular commanders. Decree of Pain, a pretty popular Wrath. It's cheap just because it's been reprinted a bunch of times, not because it's like a bad card or anything. So even the bulk today is relatively solid. Moving into the lower rarity cards, we actually have some of the best uncommons that we've seen from the entire set as far as value. So when you're opening an expensive pack of Magic cards, you're obviously hoping to hit, the big mythic, the big rare that's worth a bunch of money. But one of the things that can soften the pain of opening that bulk rare pack is getting a good uncommon or two in your pack. And we are finally seeing some really good high value uncommons. Exsanguinate's like $5, Ashnod Altar, maybe $3 now. It's been reprinted a few times. Reliquary Tower, it always goes back up to like $2 or $3. It's reprinted constantly, but some players just play in literally every one of their commander decks. Vandal Blast, like $5. Stormkill Arnis, almost $5. Reality Shift, kind of the weakest of the bunch, only like $1, but still in the uncommon slot, getting $1 is not bad. So these are pretty much the list of the uncommons that you really want to open if you crack a pack, plus some of them are getting this sweet borderless treatment as well. Lastly, we got a couple of downshifts, although not to common, so these aren't actually going to help Pauper in any way, but Anafenza Kingstree Spirit down to uncommon for the first time, Rockamar down to uncommon for the first time. Rockamar no one actually really plays. Anafenza though does have some combo potential. There's some persist combo loops that take advantage of the bolster one. Not an expensive card, but still it's kind of cool to see it show up in uncommon. Anyway, that brings us to the end of our daily Commander Masters tier list for today. So what do you think? I gotta say, if we were tier ranking the days of Commander Masters spoilers, I think today would be an S tier day. I think this is the strongest day of spoilers we have gotten from the set so far, which is a big relief because yesterday would be like the F tier day where it was like a ton of bulk and no high end stuff. So it's really nice to see there are a lot of really valuable, in-demand, popular cards in this set, and Wizards seems to be really trying to reprint everything. Sure, some of it's bumped up to Mythic. Sure, some of it's gonna just rebound in price because it's so high in demand. But at this point, there's not a ton on my please reprint this list that hasn't shown up in the set so far. I think the big one's still Mana Crypt. We haven't seen Mana Crypt. But outside of that, it seems like Wizards kind of is hitting it out of the park as far as what is in the set. Sure, the set's really expensive. That's another issue. But really, if you're just gonna design a set of Commander Masters, I think the set is doing a really good job of putting the cards that people want into it. Obviously, there is more bulk than I would like. I will say, super little quick rant at the end. In my dream world, Master sets would not care about limited. I think that it's actually kind of foolish to have a set like Commander Masters care heavily about limited. That's always the justification for the bad cards. We need these 50-cent bulk rares to support limited archetypes or whatever. That's always the argument for the bad cards. I would say for Master sets, forget limited. Sure, there's a lot of people drafted if they want to, but the focus should be exclusively on reprinting the most valuable, most in-demand cards that people need to be able to get at a discount, because Magic is a really expensive game. It seems foolish to me to focus too much on limited because the set's so expensive anyway. The average player isn't going to be able to draft this set very much, even if it's an awesome draft format, just because it's so expensive. So it seems silly to focus so much on draft when players really aren't going to be able to draft it all that often anyway, at least the average player, just because the cost is so high. Instead, I would rather see them focus exclusively on putting every single in-demand reprint into the set possible, getting rid of the draft shaft bulk rares, making the packs as awesome to open as possible, and using the sets purely to support the Commander format and other, competitive formats, but do it just for Constructed. This is to get the reprints for Constructed, not for Limited. We have tons of ways to play Limited that doesn't cost $300 for a 24-pack box. So anyway, that's my rant. That's the spoilers for today. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it. And I'll be back, I think, tomorrow with one more spoiler video. So until then, have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you soon. Looking for even more Magic? Well, check out today's Commander Clash, where everyone has to build a deck that costs $25 or less.